Hi, I'm Bob Burbank.
So
And
this is
welcome to Weekend
this is
Today.
D. David
We're going to
Morin.
find out on
I
today's
was living in
show
an
why
apartment
protein
in
may not
Hollywood, and
be
he was a
good in
neighbor
your
of
dog's
mine.
diet, and why that
He
old
was the
fat
former
food
editor of
may in
Action
fact be
Now,
better
which was
than the
the
new
former
gourmet
Skateboarder
canned food that you
magazine,
get at the store.
and he had
Federers
been
take
going
an
to film
exciting look at
school.
skateboarding. When I was a kid, we used
And
to
he
take
came
an
to me
old
one day
rollerblade
and said,
apart
"Hey,
and nail it on a
my
2x4.
friend Dan Donnelly and I have an idea to do a
Nowadays, you can
skateboard
walk
film
into
for
a
you and
sporting goods
George,
store or drugstore
and we'll
and buy
charge you
one of these.
$5,000, and we'll make
Good.
a film for
Here's a
you, and
skateboard.
we'll
Not
focus,
a
put
skateboard.
it on the Bones Brigade team and do the whole
We're gonna do a
number."
little
So
adjusting here.
Right here on
that was the impetus behind this whole video. But before I finish that story, we did this in my parents' den. We bought a TV and broke it out like that. And actually, that television was incredibly hard to break. I hit it about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times before it would actually break. I haven't seen this video in 20 years, I think. I rarely look at stuff I've done in the past. D. David asked us to, said he would make this film for us. I went to George, said D. David and his partner want to make a film for us. George was interested, I was interested, and so we set up our first shoot, which was going to be at Lance's ramp, featuring Lance, McGill, and Caballero. Actually, this was one of our first shoots right here. Lance jumping off his roof. Lance was jumping off everything back then. It turns out that D. David never ended up being able to make the film, so I ended up having to make the film myself, not knowing anything that I was doing, having any clue whatsoever. But I got a video editing system put in my apartment in Hollywood. I got a video camera, and we just started shooting, and 8 months later we had this film. That right there was Kevin Ansel, who's gone on to become a very famous artist. This was Bicknell Street, just up in Santa Monica. But when we first started making the film, Lance, who was not even originally going to be a major member of the team, he was the only team member that lived in Los Angeles, and so we started shooting him doing these, just skateboarding down streets like this back then. And he was so much fun to watch, and we started cutting the footage together, and people started looking at it and just laughing because he was just a blast to watch. And we decided to string the whole film together by just a day in the life of Lance. And it kind of operates that way. He just skates from place to place. This pool right here was in Los Angeles. It was downtown LA somewhere in the Wilshire district. It was one of those pools that was open for a couple of weeks, and we went down there to shoot it, putting Eddie Radke together, Steve Statham together, and whoever else showed up and stuff like that. Remember, this was in the really dark days of skateboarding. We were coming out of the 81 and 82, which at that time we weren't even sure skateboarding was going to last any longer. Skateboarder magazine had gone out of business. They were really, really tough times, and we were wondering even if the company was going to stay in business. But we were doing everything we could to promote skateboarding, and we felt this video was going to be the kind of a trump card. We had assumed in making the video that it was only going to be shown in video stores. In skateboarding stores. We figured we would probably sell around maybe a couple hundred of them. But what we didn't realize is that we were making this thing on the on the eve of the VCR revolution, when everybody in America would suddenly have VCRs, and so there would suddenly be this market for these films. All the footage you see here is all around downtown Los Angeles, where all heavy graffiti. And every location we went to, we stole. Never got permits. We're constantly getting kicked out of everywhere. I think this is Pat Darren shooting most of this footage. We would go out usually with Pat Darren and myself, Stasek and Lance, and we would just go and shoot places, whatever looked good. That's my dad right there, and that's my neighbor Al, who I grew up with, and we just decided to do this scene with them as bums. Haven't seen this in so long.
Shove off.
They had a fun time doing it. We liked them so much we decided to do an ad with them. I think we called it celebrity endorsement. And we were always trying to figure out ways to put guys into the videos. And so, with Pear being a freestyler,
I'm not too sure.
We just figured we'd have him infiltrate Venice Beach, which at that time was a really, really heavyweight roller skating place, like disco skating and stuff like that. And so we just put him down there one day and had him go in there and do his thing, and he attracted a pretty big audience. And again, Per at the time and like Rodney Mullen were kind of inventing this new style of freestyle, which was based around the ollie. And it was different than conventional freestyle, which we had done in the past, in that they were popping the board and doing all sorts of flips and things like that. But all this footage you see was done on the fly. It was always like whatever we can get, we're going to get. Nothing, very rarely were things planned in advance. But one thing that I had learned from my friend D. David, who was originally going to do the film, he told me, whenever you shoot a sequence, always make sure you cut away to reaction shots of people. So there you see a reaction shot of Lance. Lance isn't even looking at Per right there. Those were separate shots taken another time later. All these shots are separate. We went down to Venice Beach a whole bunch of different times to kind of make the sequence complete, because when we originally shot it, we only shot it with Per skating and stuff like that. I think Lance was not there on the same day that Per was there, if I'm not mistaken. This sequence right here is somewhere in Los Angeles. I have no idea where. But I know that this particular run of Lance's we had to do a million times because he kept falling off it, because the bank was so crummy. And this is a building in LA that Stesic really liked. I think it was the Coke building, and it looked like a big ship, like a steamliner. This particular video had a tremendous amount to do with Lance becoming repopular again and becoming kind of like a really top skater again, and popular with skaters all over the world. People really just dug his vibe and dug how funny he was, and they dug how funny, what a good skater he was. This is a situation where we showed up at a bank, this sewer ditch to skate, and we saw this Asian wedding, and it was so neat to see that we decided to run some camera on it. And we had set that shot up where we said, look, you guys, we're going to be on the wedding crew. We're going to give you a cue, and then as soon as we pull the camera back, we want you to walk through frame. And we just did stuff like that that was kind of strange and weird. Again, I think this is a ditch that Lance had found, and he said he thought it would make a good sequence in the video. And so we brought Caballero down from San Jose, had the guys just do a session at it, and we shot it. And that's about how simple things were back then. And we were shooting with what's called a 3/4 inch video camera, which is a really, really giant camera, and it's connected to a really, really giant recorder. These things were really cumbersome to use. But that's all they had that thing. They didn't have consumer electronics back then. You couldn't go to a Circuit City and buy a video camera. This was all professional equipment and stuff. Really expensive, too, to rent. And we also put Tony in this because we wanted to show that he could do all-around skating, so we were always kind of encouraging the guys to do more than skate what they typically skate. If they were pool riders, we wanted to show them riding banks, wanted to show them riding street. Just felt it was important all the time to really encourage them to be all-around guys. And we really encouraged the stuff like that, these goofy falls and stuff, just to show them having a good time, and that, even though they're professional skateboarders, they're still kids. They're still just having a good time. And that was something we were always trying to promote, man, that we got to keep aware that this is just about having fun. And although we were running a business, we didn't want to get too professional in how we ran it. We wanted to make sure that this thing was about fun and stuff like that. This music you're hearing right now and the previous song, I believe, was from a surf movie by Hal Jepsen. And Dennis Dragon, who used to produce all of Hal's soundtracks, produced the soundtrack for this song. For this video. He produced about 20 or 30 pieces of music for us, and I think we paid him like $3,000. Back then, you couldn't license music for stuff like this. Again, this building was down in downtown Los Angeles, and it was a building that we just dug, and we would just take Lance there and say, what can you do here? This was probably, we're shooting out of the car at the time, screaming at Lance, stay in frame. And then Lance found this train track across the street and started doing, when we were trying to set up a shot, he started doing these rail slides. And we thought, God, well, let's get a shot of that, you doing that and stuff. And remember, this is before street skating had become something. So it was like kind of a brand new thing. And that was emerging that hadn't really taken off yet, if you can believe that there one time was no such thing as street skating. Again, this little transition moment right here, we just, Stesic may have thought it up, or somebody thought it up, but we were just trying to figure out how do we string these different sections together in this to make a film, to make an actual video. And we shot this in way downtown Los Angeles. These are situations where we just showed up at a place and had Rodney start skateboarding. And everywhere he did it, he was doing such amazing stuff that people would always stop and freak out. And of course, you know, we get kicked out there. That was the normal thing. Always happened everywhere we went.
The story you've just heard is true. The names were changed to protect the innocent.
The guy's showing us their gang signs. I don't know how many days it took us to shoot this segment. This was a park nearby where we just got kicked out, and we just had Rodney start back up again. He was unbelievable what he was doing then. Rodney was actually literally inventing a whole new form of skateboarding, which you could call modern freestyle. But again, these shots right here, it was at the suggestion of my friend D. David. He said, always get the background of people, always show what's happening whenever you're showing a sequence. So that's why when we saw this Birdman, he was such a fabulous thing to see. And then this guy going down the street on a couch. All this stuff was so fascinating to us that we wanted to incorporate it into the film to show the life that was going on around there. We didn't have the money to take the crew to Florida to shoot Rodney in Florida where he lived. He lived in Gainesville, so we brought him out to Los Angeles to do it here and stuff like that. We probably shot this scene from 5 different angles. That's angle 1. The angle before was with the guy with the, the birds all over him and stuff like that. And this was a further away angle. But we tried to always show every single trick like Rodney was doing to show the modern stuff he was doing. But that was the sequence, and boom, we're out of here. And that was my car in the background, the trusty Volvo. And then this was a pretty famous place in LA at the time, the CMA building. And I remember when we shot this, we were commenting on the light from the buildings had these gigantic kind of mirrors on the glass, and it created this amazing light outside. We got kicked out of there that day too, but look at the light on Lance there, and that was all from that building reflecting onto him. And again, these are some of the first shots that we got of Lance just going down the street, and it just looks so much fun. We had kind of forgotten how much fun just riding down a sidewalk was. And that's why this became so important in this film, is we just stumbled on these shots of him doing this, and it was so appealing that we decided that, that's going to be part of this film. It's not just going to be guys tearing up and doing the latest maneuvers, but it's going to be someone just jamming around. And that's Rip City in Santa Monica, which is like the oldest skateboard shop in Santa Monica. Guys have been around forever. They know more about skateboarding than any human beings in the universe. And again, this is one of our dumb transitions to get Tony Hawk and Tony Hawk sequence in. This sequence really reflects the first time that anyone had ever truly seen Tony skate. And this was the beginning of the Tony Hawk phenomenon. Up until this time, Tony had not done that well in contests, and he was still kind of a real skinny, weak skater. He showed amazing promise, but he was not liked by a lot of the old guard. The guys at Upland didn't like him, the skaters at Upland, and the guys in San Francisco who were running Thrasher magazine, they didn't care for Tony either, so he had a hard time making it, and he had a hard time getting himself established. And when this video came out, it was the first time people had ever seen the kind of maneuvers that Tony was doing, because he was inventing them. They'd never seen the airwalk, they'd never seen the finger flip, and so it was a whole brand new thing. It was also the first time people had seen Steve Stedham. At this time, he was the leading African-American skater. I mean, there was Freddie DeSoto as well, but I believe Steve was a better skater. He was really taken off at that time, and he was just about to get a board by us as well. And again, there's Tony doing the airwalk. This had never been seen before. And I remember when I used to go down there and photograph him at Del Mar, he was so thin and so weak that I was always afraid when he'd fall that he was going to just crash and break like a piece of porcelain. But he was so willful and so hungry to be good, and he wanted to be good so badly. The guy just pushed himself constantly and was constantly thinking up new maneuvers. And again, these are the reaction shots that D. David taught me to do. He said, always cut to people reacting. And These are all people that were just watching Tony. You know, getting in the bowl with a wide-angle lens is what we did there and stuff. We were always trying to make things, you know, keep the camera moving and, you know, do something to show different angles. I think I shot this sequence, I believe we did this on a Saturday in 1983. It might have been in the fall or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And these shots you see right here, this was like the highest form of technology we could get. We would slow it down on one video camera machine and tape it to another in slow motion because you couldn't shoot in slow motion back then. But Tony was really, after this video, he started becoming really, really popular, and skaters all over the world were really taken to him because the stuff he was doing was so inventive. And as great as the other guys on the team were, Caballero and Lance and McGill, and they were great, they weren't doing the maneuvers that Tony was doing. I mean, he was literally a one-man invention machine. And I believe this video was before, God, I can't remember, well, we'll see later on. I can't remember if it was before Mike invented the 540 or not. But so many of these tricks were had never been seen before. And there's Adrian Domain and Kevin Staub, who were younger guys on our team, who were just coming up and stuff like that. But prior to this, Alan Gelfand had been on our team, and by this time he was off doing something else in his life. But he was the inventor of the ollie, the vertical ollie. He was also an absolutely amazing skater at his time, doing a lot of amazing original work. Again, no one had ever seen this move before. Tony was invented it, and you couldn't really, it was so difficult for magazines to show maneuvers like that because you really needed to see them on video to get the impact of the move and the difficulty of the move. But all these moves, the half varial and all that stuff was so new, and Tony was just amazing, amazing. I think he was 14 or 15 there. And again, this is just another day that we took Lance out on the street to get more transitions between segments, because as we were filming this film, we were kind of learning how to do it as we were doing it. We never knew really where anything was going to go, and we didn't really know. I certainly didn't know what I was doing, and I know Stesic was really helpful in kind of figuring out how to patch these segments, these disparate segments together. And again, Lance found this gas station that he thought would be fun to shoot, so we went there one night and did him doing all these street maneuvers that were just kind of new to the scene. And as I said prior, street skating was just coming on right now. And we had no idea where that was going, and these shots were taken at, a famous a famous place in LA called Melrose, which was kind of the hit place to go for kind of the punk scene to buy new wave clothing and stuff. And we shot them there at nighttime. I think we used the headlights of my car for this segment. We never had anything but natural light and stuff to do anything with. And that's Lance's house where he lived with his parents. I really liked sound effects at the time, and we just popped that in there for no reason whatsoever, but I thought it sounded good. I was in my in my apartment in Hollywood, dreaming up ways we could make this different. The guys I'm skating with here are Chris Iverson and Todd Hastings, and they worked for the company. Todd was kind of the assistant team manager, and Chris was into research and development with, working on designs with George. And we would do this in our spare time, this downhill sliding stuff. It was invented by Cliff Coleman in San Francisco. And this is one of the most fun types of skateboarding I've ever done in my life. And the reason we put this segment together is we just wanted to show that there's other things to do besides ride vertical. And the whole purpose of these videos was just kind of to help expand our mind on what skateboarding is about. I haven't done this type of skating in 15 or 20 years, but man, it is so much fun because you can't go too fast. The thing about if you don't have those gloves with the things, you can go too fast and you never can stop, but the gloves allow you to stop and slow down. We just spent a whole day doing it there, and I remember we were shooting out of D. David's Porsche because he had this little Porsche with a little trunk in it, and he went out with us this day, and I think we put Stesic in the trunk and had him shooting a lot of this moving stuff. But again, it was just one of those things where you show up to a situation and go, okay, what are we going to do here? And we shot all day long. I don't think anybody ever got hurt. We never got kicked out. And once in a while, kids would come, ride their bicycles and go, God, what are these guys doing? But we used to also do this in the hills above Santa Barbara. On Friday afternoons after work, I would go up there with Chris and with Todd and with other people that worked in the company, and we'd just shoot these hills and bomb them and just have so much fun. But we actually got better at this later. We're not doing too much fancy stuff here, but I think in one of the later videos, maybe public domain, we're doing 360s and body laydowns and all sorts of stuff. But that's when we were also riding those gigantic wheels, and this is before boards were concave as well. Or, when there were big flat plank decks and stuff like that. And again, this music was produced by Dennis Dragon, and it was one of those songs that he did. And we're back to Lance's house. Lance's father collected ancient English military stuff, so that little coat of arms was, I think, their family deal. And this is Lance's backyard, where we set these guys up to skate his ramp and stuff like that. God, you look at the shorts these guys are wearing and how tight everything was back then, and it's hysterical. But McGill lived in Florida, Lance lived in LA, and Steve lived in San Jose, and a lot of people thought that because they were such a tight team that they hung out all the time together, but they actually didn't. They didn't get a chance to hang out all that much because they only came together for videos or demos or contests, and the rest of the time of the year they were skateboarding their own places in their own cities. But whenever they got together, they were very, very good friends and stuff like that. But what we tried to do here is we tried to shoot the film from multiple angles and showcase every move that these guys specialized in. So whenever we would do a shoot, I would be talking to them saying, are we covering every move you guys do? And if we didn't or weren't, we would cover it and do it and go back and shoot it. And that's a friend of mine, Drew. I don't know why we got that reaction shot. I can't remember, but I just remember we decided to put reaction shots of people in this, even though there was nobody there. There's, again, a reaction shot to McGill, which really wasn't organic at the time. But again, these are all skaters all over the world had never seen this type of skating before because there wasn't an avenue for them to see it. They'd only get to see magazine pictures and stuff like that. And so this was, in a sense, the first time that they had seen it. Now, these girls we put in later on, I think it was just decided by somebody that we needed girls in the film. So a friend of mine knew these 3 girls and said, hey, can you come to Lance's ramp? We just want to shoot these reaction shots of you. So all these are just dumb shots that we put in. And it's really more of an indication of what a bad filmmaker I was than anything else. Or how desperate we were to show something besides just guys skateboarding. But all this stuff was cut in my apartment. I'd stay up late at night cutting these shots together, or these sequences together. And I think we shot this over a 3-day period, and we kept going back to get insert shots of certain maneuvers that these guys did. Or if Lance, 2 months later learned a new trick, we'd go back to his house and shoot that and insert it into this. We were always trying to do everything we could to keep things current. And I think I cut the film over an 8 or 9 month period, not knowing where this thing would come out, if it was going to come out to be 15 minutes long or a half an hour long or an hour long. But we just continually kept shooting and stuff. And I think we did this in the spring of '83, this segment. And we shot those reaction shots of those girls in my friend Pat Darren's driveway. That was the ivy behind the wall and stuff like that. Again, this is all music that was done by Dennis Dragon in one night in some little podunk studio in Malibu. Lance's ramp at that time was kind of famous because it was one of the best ramps in California. And guys from all over the country would come skate his ramp because they'd heard a lot about it. And Lance, being the kind of craftsman he is, he built it and he kept it up really well. And it was always in really, really good shape. But God, you listen to this music and it sounds so canned and so goofy. But it's the only thing we could get our hands on at the time. And each guy, I think we filmed, we knew we were going to, you know, each guy would have 2 or 3 runs. So we'd set up at one place and do everybody's tricks like on a hip or on the gap. And then we'd set up on another angle and get everybody's tricks there. And then we'd do the master angle and get everybody's trick, you know, get everybody's complete run there. You look at the height these guys are getting back then, and it was kind of like this, an indication of where things were going to go, because this was before flat bottom really got really stretched out. You can see that Lance's ramp compared to today's ramps is pretty tight, but back then it was really a wide ramp. Prior to this ramp, you know, and many other ramps at that time, no one knew that the importance of flat bottom and how important that was going to be in the future to guys launching and getting height. But if you look at Caballero and you look at Lance, you look at McGill, the way these guys skated, they took off from where Tony Alva and myself and Jay Adams and everybody from our generation really began. And these guys really took it from the pool and realized and started showing that the future of skateboarding was going to be in the air and not on the ramp itself. So this is where we shot Rodney. We, you know, as you saw earlier, we showed him downtown, but I really wanted to show him somewhere where you could really see the gravity of the maneuvers that he was doing. All the stuff he's doing here was so new at the time and so futuristic and so personal, because Rodney invented these tricks. No one had ever seen stuff like this. No one had ever even thought stuff like this could exist on a skateboard. But Rodney would go home to Gainesville and we'd bring him out to California every time there was a contest or a video or something to do. And each time he came out, he usually had 10 or 20 brand new moves he had figured out. And all this stuff was not only new, but it was so groundbreaking. And it was showing everybody that there was more that you could do on a skateboard that we had ever conceived of. And there was an ollie flip there. Rodney invented the ollie flip. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he invented the flatland ollie. Alan Gelfand invented the ollie on banked walls in Florida, and then he invented it on vertical, but he didn't invent it on flat, and that was, I think, Rodney's contribution to skateboarding. And if you look at what Rodney's doing here, even though it was considered freestyle at the time, he was really laying the groundwork for modern street skating. Because if you look at street skating now, it's really a combination of this and street skating, in that the guys are doing these complex technical moves, but they're doing them on boards that are bigger, and they're doing them on railings and down stairways and stuff like that. But this was the foundation. Rodney was so ahead of his time. And it's not like he had one maneuver that was amazing. The guy had so many maneuvers that were amazing. And he literally learned these things and invented these things like in a vacuum. There were so few people in the world doing anything like what he was doing. It's unfortunate that skateboarding didn't make it into the Olympics, because if they did, Rodney would have certainly been the king of all that. Also wanted to really show a contest to see how these guys skated in contests, because if you'll notice here, I'm not cutting away to different angles. I'm showing straight how these guys skateboard. So you could really see how skateboarding was becoming modern. I mean, look at these guys. They're doing an aerial or a massive maneuver on every wall. And in our generation, that was unheard of. By the time that, McGill and Caballero and these guys were, skateboarding, in order to do well in contests, you really had to hit the wall with a maneuver every single wall. This was an indication of what things were going to look like and how skateboarding was going to look like towards the end of the 80s, when, vertical skateboarding really came into its own and really was the most popular form of skateboarding at that time.
Northern California world champion, inventor of the Caballero and many other maneuvers.
I had picked Steve Caballero up on the team when he was about 13 years old, and I remember at the time I asked him to be a part of the team, and he said he'd go home and think about it, and I went in kind of a panic, because I could see that this guy was going to be such an amazing skateboarder, and I wanted him on the team so badly. I didn't want to have the company and not work with guys like this. And he called me a couple weeks later and said, yeah, I want to take you up on your offer and be a part of your team. And we sponsored him. I mean, he's still on the team, and he's the longest lasting Powell Peralta skateboarder of anybody. And what so many people don't realize, because Tony Hawk has had such a remarkable career, they don't realize that Caballero has had an even longer career than Tony Hawk and is probably the second most successful professional skateboarder in the world next to Tony. Again, I wanted to show a different contest. This is Lance skating upland, and you just see Lance skating here, and he's really utilizing the entire pool, every angle of it, and showing how important it is to be proficient in drawing lines. And back then, a skater couldn't win unless he drew really proficient lines and utilized the entire pool, every part of the pool. That's something that Lance was amazing at, is hitting every part of this pool. And man, those early contests were just amazing. That's me congratulating him there. And I always had a fun time doing this, showing the kind of the beef sections, because some of the falls these guys do were absolutely hilarious. And it was just fun putting crash sounds and ridiculous sounds to all this. This was always a favorite, cutting this stuff together, and people always enjoyed it. God, we had so many of them, but it always ended with Lance, because Lance always had the best falls. God, I forgot about that. Whoa. Yeah, you could get pretty scraped up doing that stuff. Ouch. I think I pulled my arm out on that one. Lance almost broke the camera on that one. Oh my God, Todd tripped over Chris Iverson there. This was towards the end of this video that we shot this segment. During the time of shooting this film, street skating was kind of emerging more and more and getting more popular, and we wanted to capture that. So we got these guys together again and just did this segment impromptu at Lance's, down the street from his house. Again, nobody knew that street skating was heading to be the most popular form of skateboarding, but these guys started doing this, and we just wanted to show them doing it. That's just hanging out the back of the car doing this stuff. And again, we just wanted to show that skateboarding is not just a professional thing, but it's also about having fun and just doing stupid things. This is Kevin Staub and Adrian Domain, and I wanted to make sure those guys got somewhere in the video so we could introduce them as upcoming guys on the team. Eddie Radigi, Steve Stedham. We wanted to show that the team is just bigger than the main guys that we have on it. Rodney's showing me something. It's amazing to see how young these guys are. It was a really difficult trick Parrott was doing there. And that's Stesik's voice imitating this kid. Oh man, all these outtakes.
Why are you beating at me? I don't want the skateboarders.
This is all stuff just doing it on the fly. I don't know.
I'm not going.
I think I cut this segment in my house at about 1:30 in the morning one day, coming home from somewhere. I just decided to work, and I just had all this random footage I never knew what we were going to do with, but I put it together, and it came out with this with this song. God, I haven't seen so much of this footage in so long.
Big look at skateboarding.
One of the most important things that we felt at the time of making this video is that skateboarding was really starting to become popular. We were starting to grow as a skateboarding company. And there was really this talk about, is skateboarding going to be professional? Is it going to be, an Olympic sport? And we all decided that we didn't want it to become an Olympic sport. And the whole point of this video was to show that although these guys are professionals and they do the most advanced tricks going at the time, they also skateboard because it's fun. This video is particularly focused on guys having fun, skateboarders having fun, just going out and doing it, goofing off, and having a great time, because that's ultimately what skateboarding is about. And although we show them at contests and we show them doing their latest maneuvers and their latest really difficult material, we also show them doing the real deal, which is just skateboarding through the streets. And so that's what this video is about. And that's where our philosophy at the time was, is that let's keep this thing fun.